Hey everyone, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make techno like Polar Inertia. As usual, you get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets, all of that stuff in this video in the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, let's dive in. So we're at 133 BPM. The first thing that we have here is the noise, which sounds like this. So what this is it's two layers of noise, and you can hear it's just really prominent in the track. You know, with this style, with Polar Inertia sound, and really with like these kind of more ambient styles of techno in general, this noise on top of everything is going to add a lot to the mix. Like you can hear what it's doing in terms of texture and color and character for the mix. And if I turn this off, it just doesn't have that same level of atmosphere to it. So this is definitely really important. And what we've got here is, like I said, we have two samples. We have this one. So kind of like a more textured one. And then this one, which is more of like that bright, like high end to it. And yeah, we're just layering these together, you know, to kind of get the best of both. Like this one really adds a lot of texture to the mix. And then this one adds that thing that you hear on top of everything. And then I have those in a group together being processed. The first thing we have on here is a bit of drum bus. So drum bus on everything. You can see like the drum bus just really helps to glue these together. If I turn it off, you can hear two different noises, but when I turn it on, it just kind of becomes this big, full, dense kind of noise. And this is the thing, is like a lot of times people hear this kind of techno and think, oh, let me just, you know, put one noise sample with no effects on top of the track and it's going to work. That's not going to work. Like, in order to make this noise work and to make it fit in a mix like this, you need to do stuff like this, like putting drum bus on all of the noise and or maybe some saturation or whatever you want to use, but you need to process it and really try to make it full and just as big as it can be to really fit over top of this mix. And the only other effect I have on there is this EQ8, and I'll show you why I have this. So here's without it. You can hear this kind of noise tends to have a lot of like stuff happening in the low end and the low mid range, so that's just cutting that out. I'm doing a little bit of a high end boost, and yeah, that is it for the noise. After that, we have the pad, which sounds like this. This is made using three layers. We have this one, this one, and this one. And so these are all three playing different parts, but they're all from the same chord. You can see this first one here is playing like the main chord, is playing an F minor chord. You can see we got F, G sharp, and C, and then I have another F up here, and then a G up here, which is the ninth. So it's kind of like a G or an F minor 9, but instead of having, like if it was an F minor 9, it would be this. You'd have the D sharp there, that minor 7th. You can hear that just sounds a little bit too happy, so I moved it up to F. And yeah, and then the other ones are just playing notes from that chord. Like you can see the second one is just playing F and G sharp, so just the root note and the minor third. And that's just kind of adding a bit more body. And then this one is just playing F just to kind of add like a sort of drone over top of it. So yeah, this is like how you want to set up the chords with this style. Like there's a lot of pads in this style of music, and this is how you do it. You don't want to just have one, you kind of layer them together. And it's all about the chord you're playing. I actually have a different chord over here that I was playing around with too, like you can see. Which I've heard pads like this in some of Polar Inertia's tracks, but it's a little bit happier, you know, it's a little bit more of like a melancholic kind of feel, I guess. This one you can see, it's also just an F minor 7, or an F minor 9, where we've got F, G sharp, C, D sharp, and G. Those are all the notes from the F minor 9 chord. And then I added this A sharp in the middle. And then this chord is playing G sharp, A sharp, and C, and then this one is playing F. So yeah, just kind of a little bit of a different take on it. I've got both of these in the project file here if you grab that down below. But yeah, and then for the sounds on this one, I made the first one using analog. You can see what we've got here is some noise and then 2 saw waves going into a low pass filter which has an LFO on it. So the LFO is just moving it really subtly over the course of time here. This is really important with this style of track. You need something that's moving really slowly because it's really repetitive. And the idea here is that it gives you time with the repetition to kind of like think about what you're hearing. It's like you're hearing this repetitive loop over and over. But then by having this constantly moving over top of that, like I said, it kind of gives you some time to like really take it in and think about it. I get the amp envelope set like this, and then we have some vibrato, just kind of like making it warble a little, as well as a bit of unison to give it a bit more of like that big chorusy sound. And yeah, then after that we have a bit of chorus. Here's without this. And with it, so you can hear, this is important with pads like this. You really need this to put it in the right place in the mix. You kind of want this to be in the background a little. And if we don't have this on, it's very like up front like that. But when we turn on the chorus, kind of spreads it out and puts it in a different place. After that, we just have a bit of reverb to give it a bit more space, and then a high pass filter. And that is it for the first pad. And then the second layer, it's just made using operator. This one's meant to fill out the low mid-range a little bit more. Like, this is the one that you really hear. But then when we add in this one, you can hear why it's there because it really fills out the sound and makes it feel more, like, well-rounded. For this one, I made it using operator. This is an FM pad. So we have 2 sine waves. You can see I've just got them detuned a little bit and then doing some FM. And then those are going into a bandpass filter. And then the bandpass has an LFO on it, which is just moving it really slowly, just like with that last synth. And yeah, and then I just have a bit of chorus on that, and just spreading the sound out, as well as a bit of reverb to give it some space. And yeah, and then the last layer of pad is this one. And so this is made in a similar way to the last one. You can see it's just FM. We've got 3 sine waves here inside of operator, all at different octaves, and they're just creating this kind of cool waveform here. And then this one, I've got it going into a bandpass filter, which also has an LFO on it, slowly moving it. And then we just have a bit of chorus, a bit of reverb, and that is it for that layer. And then on all 3 layers, I have a bit of processing as well. You can see the first thing here is just a bit of saturation. Here's without it. And then with it, so this is kind of like with the noise. It's like you can't really just have a pad like this without some saturation because it's going to glue all 3 of these layers together, and it's also going to fill it out more. You know, part of this music is just how full it sounds and how like much the frequency spectrum is really like, you know, there's a lot of attention to detail in terms of like making the sounds fill out the frequency spectrum. And this is how you do that, is by really just optimizing them and maximizing them with some saturation. It's not distorting it, but it's just gluing everything together more and making it fatter. Then after that, we have this EQ8. This is just cutting out a bit of low end, because if I turn this off, you can hear. Sometimes these kind of sounds can add a little bit of low end. And we're just cutting that out and cleaning it up. And yeah, that is it for the pad. The next sound that we have here is this little analog growl thing, which sounds like this. Which you can hear this in the mix, it sounds like this. So you can hear this is just kind of like a chill background layer. What it is it's just playing F, and it's just doing these little like, like that, kind of like syncopated with what the kick is doing. This just kind of adds something a little bit of extra like in the mix. Like this is kind of one of those subtle detail layers that I feel like people kind of miss, because if you turn this off, it's cool, but this kind of feels like the intro versus when I put this on. It's adding a lot to the overall track in terms of just groove, and like I said, kind of adding in a sound in between the spaces here. So for the sound on this one, it's made using analog. It's just a saw wave, then going into a bandpass filter, and then the bandpass is just slowly moving. You can see I have this LFO on here, and it's on the noise setting, so it's kind of like randomly moving it. And that's how you get that kind of like growling sound. So this is really important. If we just have this sit in one place, That doesn't really sound that interesting. And then I've got the amp envelope set like this, and then that is it for inside the synth. The first effect we have here is actually this resonator. So here's without this. And then with it, so you can see I have this on the B setting. I have the note tuned to F since that's the key that this is playing at. And then we have the decay down a bunch and I have the dry wet all the way up. So this is just kind of adding a bit more texture to the sound. If I turn this off, it's like a very obvious saw wave. When we turn this on, you can hear what it's adding to the overall track. So yeah, it just kind of like makes this a bit more textured, kind of a bit more interesting. It makes it so it's not just like a bare saw wave. And yeah, then after that we have a bit of echo. You can hear that, as well as a bit of saturation and some drum bus to fatten the sound up. This is really important with the sound because coming out of the synth, it's just like by default going to be kind of small. Like you hear what I'm talking about, but if we turn on the saturation and then the drum bus, it brings it out and makes it more full in the mix. And then the last thing we have on there is just an auto filter and an EQ8 cutting out the low end. So this might seem like overkill, but I'll show you why we have it. If I turn off the auto filter, or if I turn off the EQ, you can hear the auto filter does cut out the low end, but it's not really cutting it out enough, because if I play it with the kick, you can hear that clashing. So what I've done is I've just added an EQ8 after that to do another low cut. And then it gets rid of all the low end. And now this can fit well over the kick. If you're going to have a layer like this, which is playing in the lower ranges, it's really important to pay attention to this because, like, if we turn these off, you can hear. This can add a lot of low end to your mix that you don't really want. But yeah, that is it for the growl. The next sound that we've got is the kick, which sounds like this. So this is a rumble kick. What we've got here is, I'll turn off the rumble. You can hear we have two layers. So we have this one, which is more like in the low end, you know, adding the fullness and the fatness. And then we have this one, which is adding the punch. You can see I've got that high pass a little bit. So then when we layer those together, it sounds like this. You can hear like this one, the low end one on its own, just doesn't have as much fatness and fullness as it does when we add that punch layer. So that's why I have that. Then I have those two going into this rumble rack, which sounds like this. So what this is it's two chains. We have a dry chain and then a wet chain just doing the rumble. So the way we're doing the rumble here is, you can see I've got some delay, and then that is just going into an amp. I'll turn this stuff off. You can hear the delay, and then we put it into the amp, and it makes it pretty blown out, but what you can hear is it really brings out the rumbly low end. And then after that, we just take the signal, just the one that's being delayed, and then low pass it. And there we go, we get just the rumble. And then the only other thing with that is I just have a compressor, which is side chaining it to the dry kick, so we can still hear the punch of the kick. This allows you to kind of like mix them a bit better, because if you turn this off, you can get it to work. It's just not going to sound as good, and you're not going to be able to turn the rumble up as much as if you sidechain it. The sidechain kind of keeps it under control. So you can really get the most out of both the punch layer and the rumble layer. So then on everything there, I just have a bit of drum bus. Here's without it. And then with it, you can hear it makes everything fatter and really glues the rumble and the punch together. And then the last thing on there is an EQ8, which is just boosting the low end and then cutting a little bit of mud there as well. That kind of helped to get it out of the way of the growl, because that growl is hitting a lot where I cut there. And by cutting there, it makes a little bit of room for it so that we can have the growl and the kick, and they're both kind of in their own respective places. Yeah, that is it for the kick. And then the last thing that we have here is the percussion, which sounds like this all together. This one's pretty simple. We have like a shaker. You can see with this one, the main thing to keep in mind is just the velocity. You can see how I set this up. It's like... And then we have this operator hi-hat. which just plays on the upbeats. You can see this is a really simple sound and just a bit of white noise going into a bandpass filter. So there's the white noise. And then you can hear the bandpass is what makes it sound like a hi-hat. And then we have a drum bus on that because without this, you can hear, kind of still sounds like a dry synth, but when you add this, it sounds more like percussion. And yeah, then we have this open hi-hat, which just plays like that. Then the last layer we have in here is just this percussion. So you can hear this just kind of plays like that. Just kind of adds a little bit more depth to the mix by making it so it's not just hi-hats, but there's like some extra percussion on there as well. I have all those in a group together. I've just got a bit of saturation on there and then a bit of a high-pass filter. So here's with nothing. And then with everything. So you can hear the saturator really glues everything together. You know, it brings all the percussion out, gives it an even texture so it all fits together in the mix and feels like it's coming from the same place. And also just makes it all a bit fatter and more powerful. And like, you know, fat enough to contend with all the other sounds that we have in the mix. And then the high pass filter is just cutting out some low end. Here's without it. You can hear it's mainly for that last percussion sound. Because there was a little bit of low end in there, and then this is just cutting that out and cleaning up the mix. And also it helps with the other sounds as well, because like sometimes shakers and stuff, especially when you saturate them, can have a bit of low end in them. So it's just kind of making sure that none of that low end gets through, and it keeps the percussion clean and in the right place in the mix. And yeah, so that is it for the percussion. And that is also going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file and samples, MIDI and presets, all of that stuff from this video in the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. I also have a new remix that I just dropped. If you guys want to check it out, link is in the description. If you love my videos, you'll definitely love this remix. This is like me taking all the techniques that you see me do in these videos that you think are really dope and just like going 125%, just going as hard as I possibly can to make it really dope. So yeah, really cool remix. I just dropped it. Link is in the description. Definitely go check that out and support it. And yeah, thank you so much, guys. And I'll see you tomorrow with another video.